Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Coffee with Katie. I have my Shadow Singer mug, and my mic is not working right now. I think it's because my phone has been giving me some issues and I have to get a new one, and so it might not be working correctly with my phone. So that's a little bit unfortunate. So if the sound quality is not as good or you don't notice a difference, fine, but that's the reason. Today's video is going to be a book review on Alchemy of Secrets by Stephanie Garber. This is the Waterstones exclusive edition, and I got the secret cover of the sidecar drink. I would say Stephanie Garber is one of my favorite authors because I love the Caraval series, and then on that same vein, the Once Upon a Broken Heart series because I love the world of Caraval. So I was really excited about this book coming out as it's her first adult debut, and I did read it pretty quickly. So I want to give you my thoughts on this and do a review because I would normally consider myself to be a very biased person when it comes to her writing, but I have some things to say. So let's just buckle in. So first off, this book is about a student, Holland, and I think she's a grad student at this point, but I can't remember if she's just a college student or a grad student. But she takes this class called Folklore 517. And it talks about local legends and urban myths and like secret things and magical things, right? So she takes this class and learns about these different people, learns about these different like mythical people, objects, whatever. And it's taught by a woman called the Professor, and it's very like mysterious and not a lot is known about the professor or the events around the class. Most people believe that the professor's stories are just fiction, but Holland believes that magic could actually be real. And in fact, she's convinced it's real and she kind of wants to find proof of it. So she decides to track down a legend called the Watchman. And the legend has it that if you ask the Watchman for the time, he will tell you your time of death, like when you're going to die. And she ends up finding him and asking him for the time. And he tells her that she's going to die tomorrow, like at midnight, so like she's got a certain amount of hours, unless she finds this alchemical heart, which is a magical object that people haven't seen in years, or don't even know if it exists, because it's ancient. So that's kind of the premise of the book, right? And as I'm kind of talking about this, I'm going to be revealing a little bit of spoilers of the book, just because some of the things that I have to say are directly related to the characters' interactions with other characters and the decisions the character makes that kind of made this book not so great for me. But while this is an easy to read book, and it was fun and it had mysterious elements, this was pretty lacking for me, right? Because I didn't really find myself super captivated by it or in love with it as I did for like Caraval. And I feel like for Stephanie Garber's case, this author really thrives in a whimsical, fantastical setting, in a whimsical environment, in a way that she doesn't have to give you the answers to everything, and there's just tiny baby dragons that roast chestnuts, and that's just how the world is, you know? But in this case, for this book, it felt kind of disjointed for me. And Holland, the main character, was a little ridiculous. I'll get into that in a minute, but she was not the smartest person. And as far as the story goes, it felt like there was just so many questions that were thrown at you and then no answers to those questions for a long time or ever. And then something would happen and a character would just like disappear for a little bit and there's no explanation to that, and then they would just show up later. And that sounds normal, but the way it came across in this book was just like they didn't want to explain why he was gone and why the character was gone. And so the character just like disappeared for a little bit and then they just show up again. And it felt like that. It felt like, well, what happened? Why are they back? But it wasn't really addressed. They would just kind of like pop up later and that was it. And you're just supposed to be okay with it. And it just felt like there was like no connection to the events, to the people. It was a little frustrating in that regard. And it's also the book, like, with the premise and her like kind of trying to save her life, should be really serious. So it's supposed to be serious. So I don't know why it didn't come off as serious as it needed to be, or what else will come of it. I don't know. Let me get into some of my kind of vibes and complaints with it. So again, this is going to be a little bit spoilery because I'm going to be talking about parts of the plot that bothered me or didn't make sense to me. So at the very beginning of the book, when she goes to see the Watchman, she's dating this boy. and she asks him to go with her. He kind of goes with her just because she wants to. So they end up both finding out when they're gonna die, but then she wakes up the next day and she thinks it was all a dream, and ends up kind of being like, what the heck is happening? And her boyfriend calls her and he says that essentially the guy told him he's gonna die tonight and not tomorrow night like she was. And he was kind of freaking out and wanted her to come see him. And so she goes to go see him, and he kind of like tells her some secrets that make him very untrustworthy. And then she runs because she's freaking out and feels like, well, now she's actually gonna die, and she wasn't sure that she was going to before, but now that he's also really freaked out and saying all these things and kind of confessing to some lies, she's like, well, maybe I am actually gonna die tomorrow at midnight. And so she kind of runs away, and then she kind of like loops back to do something because she hears something, and she finds the guy dead. And that was the time that he was supposed to die, that the watchman told him. And so she's like, oh my gosh, it's actually true, I'm gonna die. And this dude pulls up in a car, because her car's not starting, rolls down the window and is like, get in, I will help you. And she thinks to herself, like, I don't know this man. How will I ever trust him? I don't know if I can trust him. And gets in the car, which is a normal kind of plot device for these types of books, right? There's usually a character that they don't know if they can trust, and they have to kind of learn to trust them anyway. Good or bad, right? That's not the gripe I have. But she gets in the car with him and thinks like, maybe I can't trust him, I don't know. And he's like, your sister sent me. Obviously, I'm trustworthy, right? But the sister has no contact with Holland. Dude throws her phone out the window. Sus, right? Again, it's for her own safety, and there's people after her and trying to kill her and whatever, and you're like, why is anyone trying to kill her? We don't know. Before this, she also gets a phone call, and they ask her to come to this specific place that she doesn't know exists and doesn't seem real, and they say that there's a lockbox for her that she has to come get because it was left to her. And they tell her, you can't tell anyone this information. You cannot tell anyone. You can't tell like your friends, your family. You cannot tell anyone else that you've been invited to this. You cannot. So she is in this car with, I think his name is Gabe. She's in the car with Gabe. And Gabe is kind of helping her, keeping her alive. They're on the run. And that's kind of the pacing of the whole book, is she's just kind of on the run, place to place, that's the whole thing. Trying to find this alchemical heart. But she's with Gabe that she says she cannot trust, regardless of what he says about her sister, because she can't find her sister, can't talk to her sister, has tried to text her, call her, can't. And just decides she's going to trust him because, what are you going to do, really? What are you going to do? And then they end up in a situation where they have a standoff with this other guy named, well, I don't want to say his name because that might spoil a little bit of something else for you. So Gabe and this other man is saying, hey, Holland, you can't trust Gabe because Gabe is a bad dude. And Gabe is saying, don't listen to him, Holland. He's the bad guy, not I. And she doesn't know who to trust, understandably, because she doesn't know either of them. But she decides to trust Gabe in that one moment, and then they are on the run, and then she tells him the thing that she wasn't supposed to tell anyone. Like, Holland has the survival instincts of an ant. I'm not even kidding. Like a bug, an ant. Oh my gosh. Her, non-existent. Just like, I'll tell you the information I'm not supposed to tell anyone. I'll get into a car with you. I think a bird just hit my window. I'll trust you over this other guy. But then she goes to the location, to the place that she wasn't supposed to tell him she was going. And then during that kerfuffle in this location where she ends up in another situation, because why wouldn't she? Because she doesn't know what the heck is going on, and she just believes what anyone tells her. And then somebody else tells her not to trust Gabe, and she's like, oh my gosh, I can't trust him, and runs away, even though he's basically the only person keeping her alive, right? I mean, sure, maybe we shouldn't have trusted him, but he's at least kept you alive thus far. But let's throw that out the window because we're an idiot. And so then she runs off, ends up getting back into the situation with the guy that Gabe told her not to trust, but they're both like, oh, you can't trust him. So other dude says, oh, your sister sent me, and you can trust me. And she's just like, okay, even though she just did that with Gabe and then suddenly decided that Gabe wasn't trustworthy. It's amazing she's alive, to be honest. So then she trusts him. So really, we're willy-nilly with our trust. We trust whomever, because somebody else, who we also don't know, told us to trust or not trust them. No survival instincts. My gosh. So now that I've said that, let me get to my little piece that I wrote about this in the review. So she trusted everyone, even though she would sit there and say, like, in her mind, she didn't know if she should trust them and it was a bad idea to trust them, and then would turn and trust somebody else on a whim, like literal whim. Like she's just floating in the wind on a breeze like a leaf. Like, what is happening in your brain, ma'am? And then be like, by the way, don't tell anyone this information. And she just like falls over and is like, Gabe, let me tell you this thing that I shouldn't tell anyone. And just keep doing that again and again and again. She just felt really flippant, and it was really frustrating for me because, like, and it must be the way it's written, right? Because some of that stuff you're like, oh yeah, that happens in books all the time and characters are stupid. But there's something about this that was irritating me. And the choices that she made, she needed to just like take a breath. I understand that she's about to die, but like, if you're gonna die, maybe make better choices. Even so, like, good grief. So then she's trusting the other person, and that doesn't end well for anyone, and then there's a mystery and twists and things happen from there. I know it sounds like I hate this book, but her survival instincts, again, so annoying. She was so annoying and frustrating. However, I did like the mysterious elements. There were also pieces of it that I was just like, hey, how about you trust your actual friends that have been your friends for years instead of some strangers? Some of the strangers, for the knowledge of the world you know nothing about, sure. We gotta do what we gotta do, right? But maybe in other parts of it, maybe trust the people that have been in your life for years. Seems like a wise decision, potentially. So like I said, as the story goes, you do get a little bit more of a mystery element and kind of like unraveling it as you go. I did enjoy that part of it. I enjoyed the adventure overall because it's pretty fast paced, it's pretty short. But when she decides she's not going to trust Gabe and she's in this location that she wasn't supposed to tell him, she's on the run, she sees like something happening with the lights and like this like situation is like on lockdown, right? And he texts her and he's like, how could you do this? And then just disappears for basically the rest of the book until the end. And he just pops up like nothing's wrong, everything's fine, nothing's going on, and just continues about his merry way. I need a little bit more connection in the plot, man. Ooh. Okay, and I'll be fair. Like, I don't think plot development is necessarily Stephanie Garber's shining star moment. She does a lot of whimsy. She seems like one of those people that as she writes, the story comes to her, which is totally fine. And I love the Caraval series. Again, I love it. I have no qualms. I love it. Not with this. I need more from you if you're going to write something that isn't super fantastical and whimsical, and it's not like magical realism. Like, there's magic in the world. It's a fantasy. But if you're going to write something that's more modern day, I need you to do something more. And if you're going to write a mystery, I need you to put a lot more effort into it, you know? But, again, I'm ranting. I did like this. Like, it was okay, but I gave it 3 stars, which is fine. But I have a collection of her books, you know? So, like, the expectation I have is not this. So, I also found out, I think she announced this even before the first book was out, honestly, that it's going to be a series. At least 3 books. And they're turning it into a TV show, so the TV show made her do something else with it. And of all of the books of Stephanie Garber's to get a TV show, this is what okay, anyway. It's going to be a trilogy at least. That seems to be her vibe anyway. She usually writes trilogies. So I'm sitting here like, how are we continuing this story? Because this story wraps up pretty well. Like, I think you could read this as a standalone and you could be fine. So I'm curious how she's going to open up the world and what we're going to do with that. Also, that like the very end, the very mystery of like the I don't want to say it, the thing the whole book revolves around, right? The way that comes about at the very end came across as really silly to me. It does come across in her whimsical way, but I feel like that doesn't fit in this book. So it kind of felt silly to me, and I didn't love that part of it. The rest of it was cool. I like how much of this book is kind of like old movie-based or movie-based and screenplay-based, and that has to do with the mystery. I thought that was cool. Which is why it's hard, because there are parts of this book that I really liked, but I feel like it should have been done a little bit differently, or I feel like if it had been executed differently, it would have been better, or if she wrote it kind of differently, it would have been better. But I did like it, so I think if you like Stephanie Garber's writing, or you like the premise, one of those two things, you should give it a shot. But it wasn't kind of what I was hoping for. It wasn't really what I love in writing and in books, which is sad because I would consider her in general one of my favorite authors, like I said. So while I liked it, I did find myself pretty disappointed in it. But again, 3 stars is not a bad rating. I just had qualms. I just had issues. And so much so that I usually get like the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition and the UK edition of all of her books, and I am only keeping one of them, and I'm not even sure we'll do that at some point, but this feels so negative. And I know I was ranting and it's kind of funny, but I don't want to act like I'm tearing this book apart, but also I feel like it gives you kind of an honest review of somebody that is her fan, and this is one of the probably first unbiased reviews I've ever done from her. Yeah, so it just didn't pan out the way I was hoping, and I did find myself pretty disappointed in it. Thankfully, I was also able to read it kind of all in one go on a road trip, so I finished it in a day, basically, and that helps with just like being able to keep track of all of that in your head and the plot devices and whatnot. But it was just okay. I do think if you find it interesting, you should still give it a shot. This is pretty negative. Oh, I'm sorry, Stephanie Garber. I love Caraval, but this was not what I wanted. This is not what I wanted. But that's okay, because it may be what you want, and that's okay. And I hope you read it, and I hope you love it. But this is my semi kind of spoilery review of Alchemy of Secrets by Stephanie Garber. We'll see. I will continue because I just have to know, right? Like, I'm going to continue to read her works until maybe I don't know, until she like super disappoints me maybe, but I will continue, and maybe book 2 will be better. Maybe the world will open up and it'll be super interesting and I'll want to know what's going to go down, you know? So I will keep going, but we'll see my thoughts when that happens. Thank you guys for hanging around for that ride. If you made it this far, please leave me a top hat emoji for Legend, my favorite Stephanie Garber character. And please comment down below and let me know if you've read this book, and we can totally chat about it. But for now, that is it for today's video. Please like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I will see you next time. Stay safe and caffeinated. Bye.